Welcome to Pathways to Health, a podcast brought to you by the College of Health Sciences and Professions at Ohio University. Each episode, we speak with professionals and leaders across health related fields to explore their personal and professional journeys. Whether you're a student just starting out or an alum reflecting on your own path, this podcast is designed to inspire, inform, and connect those committed to making a difference in health and well being of others. Today's guest, Ken Rusche, is the owner and co-founder of Oxford Physical Therapy Centers, 12 locations in the greater Cincinnati area. Ken, welcome to this podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. And anytime I get a chance to do something for the Bobcats, I'm right on it. And OU, oh yeah, you know that.
It's one of the great things about running this, actually. I don't always have to do a lot. People are usually very willing to talk about their experiences at Ohio University. They got a lot to say, so it's one of the easier speaking gigs I've ever.
Yeah, I see that.
So thanks again for being here. One of the primary purposes in this podcast is really to talk about people's journey. So since it's called Pathways to Health, we really do look at how people go. And a lot of times it's not a straight line path. And sometimes for some people, it may be credentials or fields were even just evolving at the time, and they're actually blazing new trails. And other times they may start out thinking they want to do one thing and then they head over into something else. So really, that's my first question, is our place to start. If you could tell me a little bit about your pathway, how did you start? And then where did you end up now with Oxford Physical Therapy Centers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've been very, very fortunate, have had a lot of great mentors, and probably starts back in high school. I played a lot of sports in Little League. And then once I got to high school, I think everybody kind of caught up with me and they got bigger and whatever. And I went out for freshman football and it just wasn't working out very well. And the coach said, "Well, would you like to be a manager?" And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he told me. I said, "Sure, I'd love to help out or do whatever." And then the following year, the coach said, "There's a athletic student trainer course through the Kramer Company. Would you like to take that and work as an athletic trainer?" And I said, "Sure." So I'm in high school and I'm taping ankles and starting to take care of athletes and doing this and doing that. And I think I always wanted to do something athletic. So, was going through high school and was the PA announcer for the JV basketball games. So I either wanted to be a sports broadcaster or maybe in athletic training. So, an interesting story, and it was probably very good for me, is I had a cousin and he was the football coach at Xavier University. And, I was kind of a homeboy, a homebody, didn't wanna leave mom and dad, and I was ready to go to Xavier University, and, my cousin actually had one of his players get drafted by the New Orleans Saints. He was a first round, second round draft choice, and, Eddie called me into his office and he said, "Hey, I'm gonna take the New Orleans Saints job." And I said, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do?" He said, "Well, let's make a few phone calls." So he called coaches around the country. One coach he called was a guy named Bill Hess here at Ohio University. He called Bill Hess. The next day, I got a call from the athletic trainer, Al Hart, getting me down here for a visit. I came down, met Bill Hess, met Al Hart, and now you know the rest of the story. So I came here, and I came here wanting to be a radio and TV major. And oh, by the way, I'll do athletic training. And of course, uh, I had to make a decision, one or the other, and I knew I couldn't do both. So we elected the athletic training route, and we started here at Ohio University as a student athletic trainer. And of course, things then were a lot different with curriculums than they are now. And I mean, this just keeps getting fate and fate and fate. But um, I had a classmate, and he's actually from Athens, Ohio, and he and I were student athletic trainers. And one day we were sophomores, and he said, "Hey, Ken," he said, "why don't we apply to physical therapy school?" And I said, "Oh," I said, "what's that?" And he kind of told me, and I said, "Well, why do we want to do that?" And he said something, and I'll never forget. He said, "It's going to open more doors." I said, "That makes sense." So now, back in those days, the um, dean of the college was a guy named James Lavery. So we looked at all the schools we could get a PT degree from, and we saw that we needed physics and we needed chemistry and we needed these courses. But a lot of the courses we were taking as athletic trainers. So we said, Dr. Lavery, this is kind of what we need to do. He said, no problem. I mean, this is crazy. So he came out with a non-certifiable pre-physical therapy minor. Now, I don't know what that means, but basically we were able to take physics, chemistry, and some of the other courses that we needed to take to apply to physical therapy school. So now Al Hart, who's the head athletic trainer at Ohio University, leaves Ohio University and he actually gets the head job at Ohio State. So we've got a connection there. And the one thing he told Paul and I was, I want to try to work closely with the athletic training students as well as the physical therapy students. So, he went up to Ohio State. He was there a couple years. And then our senior year, Paul and I applied. And I mean, I remember we applied to Mayo Clinic, we applied to Pennsylvania, we applied to Ohio State. Unfortunately, Ohio U did not have physical therapy at that time. And we were a special case because we already had a degree. So we was going to have a degree. So we went into a school, they called it a certificate program. So we had to take in 12 months what the degree students took in 2 years. So it was wrapped in 12 months. I was in class like 8 to 5. It was crazy. So we applied and I had to do a plan B or a plan A, and one of them was athletic training. So I was accepted to go to Arizona to get my master's in athletic training. And I'll never forget on May 13th, I got a letter from Ohio State, you're in. And that changed the whole world. So enrolled into Ohio State PT school, and we got through with that. And, I'm here now, but a lot of steps in between, if you will.
Yeah, that's so great. I talk to a lot of students about that decision point, and you mentioned that of, do I want to go this route? Do I want to go that route? And I think it feels really consequential for students, right? Because they say, wow, I'm trying to figure out my life here. I just wonder if we could go back to that moment for a moment. What weighed into your decisions? Was it the people you knew? Because you were talking about kind of these influential people, but I'm guessing, Ken, I mean, I'm already listening to you. You probably sounds like you could have been a good broadcaster too if you wanted to do it. And, you certainly had knowledge of athletics. So how'd if you go back to that moment, like what made you go one way or
Well,
the other?
the interesting thing was, I have a lot of great friends that I went to school with here, and they were radio and TV majors.
Yeah.
And my roommate, he turned out very, very successful. He got a job with AP, Associated Press, out of Washington, D.C., and he traveled the world doing sports. And he would be at the British Open or the U.S. Open, and he would phone in reports, and then radio stations all across the country would pick him up. So, I'm thinking, well, I really, really love athletics. And at that time, the dual role, the athletic trainer, physical therapist was really picking up. And a lot of sports medicine centers were hiring people with these credentials. So I loved being on the sidelines. I loved knowing the coaches. I loved knowing the kids. And I really love getting people back into sport. You tore your ACL, I rehab you, I watch you play, and I really, really enjoyed that. So I kinda had my cake and ate it too, if you will, because my friends my friends in radio and TV had me do, back in those days, they called them beepers, and what it was I would travel with the wrestling team or the men's soccer team, and I would phone WOUB on the quarter phone and, or the dime phone, and it was a collect call, and they knew I was calling, and I would give a report. So to this day, I remember the Ohio University Bobcat team, soccer team, defeated Central Michigan today 3-1. Eddie Roberts scored a goal with 12:38 in the second period that lifted the Bobcats. And then they would play these, they called them bleepers, boopers, or whatever. They would play them on the radio. And so I would go up to OUB on the weekends and I would hear the 30-minute, 12 o'clock sports report, and I would be reporting on sports. And to me, that was great. I was
Huh.
given sports reports on that. So, yeah, it did lead to the athletic training and physical therapy connection. But it was hard to get the athletic training out of me at first. So, came back here. Skip hired me back here. I was the
That's Skip
assist
Fossler.
Skip
Yeah.
Fossler. I was the assistant athletic trainer. And then one day I read that the assistant trainer for the Detroit Lions got the job with Seattle Seahawks. So I went into Skip. I said, "Hey, he's leaving to go to Seattle. Do you know anybody in Detroit?" He goes, "Yeah, I know the head athletic trainer." He said, "Are you interested?" I said, "Well, yeah. I mean, my goal was to work in the NFL. That was my initial goal."
Okay.
Um, so I went up there to interview, and this will leave you speechless. I got up there and interviewed, and two of the assistant coaches were my high school football coaches. I'm thinking, I'm in, bingo, click. So Jerry Glanville, the infamous Jerry Glanville, that if some of the younger people don't know who he was a head coach in the NFL, and he was an assistant coach with Detroit. And actually, we had a young coach in Detroit. He coached the tight ends. His name was, we called him Billy Belichick
Oh my God.
was the tight end coach for the Detroit Lions. So I go up to Detroit, I'm having a good time up there. And I don't know what happened. Jody, my wife, got into physical therapy school at Ohio State. Now I'm going to Detroit, and so she applied to go to Wayne State, and Wayne State said they would take her in. 2 weeks before we got married, Wayne State called her and said, "No, we don't accept transfer students." So our first year, she was in Columbus, I was in Detroit. She'd come up for the home games, and now you know the rest of the story with that. So that was crazy.
Oh. Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
and then you talk about networking. Uh, when I was when I was the my when I was in my final year of PT school at Ohio State, I had the summers off, and then when I was Skip's assistant athletic trainer, I had the summers off. We had a guy here at Ohio U. He was a trainer by the name of Larry Starr, and Larry Starr became the Cincinnati Reds trainer.
Oh yeah.
So Larry, this is great. Larry wanted to hire a full-time assistant trainer, but he had to kind of ease into it back in those days. So Larry said, "Hey, Ken, how would you like to be my part-time assistant athletic trainer?" So it took me about 3 seconds to say, yeah. So basically, I was Larry's part-time assistant athletic trainer in June, July, and August. And little did we know that Rose, Griffey, Bench, Morgan, all those guys were playing for that team. Don Gullah, Jack Billingham, Joe Morgan, and Ken Griffey Jr. was a 10-year-old running around the locker room, and Petey Rose Jr. was a 10-year-old, and Eduardo Perez was a 10-year-old running around the locker room. So I was Larry's assistant athletic trainer, and I remember the second year in '75, OU had a football game on Saturday. We were off on Sunday. I asked Skip if it was cool. So I go to Cincinnati Saturday night, stay at the homestead. I work the Reds Pirates divisional pennant series game, and then I blow back to Athens Sunday night so I could be here on Monday. So once again, here's a connection, here's a network, and I mean, it is. It's who you know, and you got to be a people person. You say hi to everyone, you meet everyone, and you never know what's going to happen. So
Wow.
that was crazy, crazy stuff.
Well, yeah, I've gotten to hear a few of those stories with Larry, but now I got more things to follow up on him about. So that's really cool. I wanted to go on that side of networking and some of those personal connections. I think it's one of the things that's pretty amazing, actually, about Ohio University is just the reach. I could go anywhere really in the world, and if I'm wearing some Bobcat gear, people will usually say, "Hey, go Bobcats" or something like that, and they have a connection. So just on that decision point though, again, for a moment, you know, how do you know to trust those people? It's you can know people, but how do you experience that? Like if you're talking to younger people about saying you go with your gut or something like that about a connection, how do you know I should do this? Or how do you manage kind of that feeling of "Uh, is this okay? This seems really consequential." How do you manage that and go,
I think it was just for me. I mean, I guess I always call myself I'm a little abnormal. I'm very, very focused. I know what I want, and if I want it, gonna try to get it. So I'm really, I'm really that way a lot, and people probably laugh when they hear that because they know me. But, um, it was just, uh, I don't know, it's just getting to know people
Yeah.
and you're their friend and you know them and you trust them and you trust what they can do. And, like you said, I just felt good about not doing radio and TV and going the other way. And then when my friend, and I mentioned his name, Paul Mullins, and to this day, I thank Paul when I see him at homecoming, and he just blows me off. I said, Paul, if it wasn't for you, I don't know where I'd be right now or what I'd be doing. But, and I said, yeah, it's no big deal. I mean, PT degree and athletic training degree, why not? I can do that, and then I can decide then. And it did open many, many doors because at that time, a lot of people were hiring the PT athletic trainer to run their sports medicine clinics. The orthopods wanted that because they wanted both sides. So, yeah, I mean, and I mean, here's another networking thing. When I was with Detroit, I met the athletic trainer for the Houston Oilers, now the Tennessee Titans. And so, I after I left Detroit, I wanted to get I'm a real homebody, wanted to get back to Cincinnati, and I ran an orthopedic practice, Cincinnati Sports Medicine. I ran their PT for 4 or 5 years, but, then it was just kinda I wanted to try academia, so I wanted to try to teach at a physical therapy school.
Okay.
So I just wanted to try it. I wanted to see what it was like, and, I opened up the physical therapy journal, and there's just a job in Galveston, Texas, University of Texas Medical Branch, and, so, I applied for it, and my wife's a pediatric physical therapist. They had a peds opening, so we went down there, and, I ended up calling the head athletic trainer for the Houston Oilers, and I said, "Hey, Jerry, do you need any help?" He said, "God, I'd love to have some help during summer football." So I wouldn't recommend it, but I would go to San Angelo, Texas. It was a long way from Galveston in the summers, and I was working their summer football,
Right.
and I mean, that place, it said, "Well, yeah, it gets hot out here, but there's no humidity." I don't care when it's 110 at night and no humidity, it's hot. So anyway, I'm out there and I'm doing pretty well. And Jerry said, "Hey, Ken, would you like to work home games with us?" I mean, that took about 2 seconds to say yes. And so then I went into Houston and we worked some preseason games. And then after the preseason games, he said, "Ken, would you like to travel with us?" I'm going, "Oh my gosh." So I get summer football, I get home and away NFL football. I don't have to be there during the week and hear all the stuff. And then I go down Galveston, and in Galveston, I'm teaching orthopedics, I'm teaching sports medicine. Me and the orthopedic doctor volunteer. We're the athletic trainer and team physician for Galveston O'Connell High School, a small Catholic high school on the island, and they did pretty well. So I volunteered there and I was helping there. So I was doing community service. I was doing this. I was doing that. I was teaching PT school, and and then unfortunately, our director stepped down, and there was a new director hired, and I was ready to start my PhD because they were going to pay for it. Why not? And I just didn't think, I didn't have a good feeling because I wanted the sports and orthopedics, and I wanted the Oilers, and I wanted that, and I just didn't have a good that was a gut. I didn't have a
Okay.
good feeling. So then, there was a hurricane that hit Galveston Island. It was called Hurricane Alicia, and, Jody came back to Cincinnati, stay with my parents, and, we were on a flight back from New Orleans. We played the Saints, flew into Houston, and I was flying back home. So we flew into Memphis, and here we go again. There's 2 orthopedic doctors in Memphis, one that I didn't know, one that was a resident when I was with Cincinnati Sports Medicine, and I was with the University of Cincinnati's Department of Orthopedics. I knew all these residents, and so now he was the Bengals team doctor, and I said, "Hey, you guys, if you ever wanna start sports medicine, let me know." So I go home, and then we waited, and we came back, the hurricane, and no electricity for 2 weeks. And it's not the hurricane that's bad, it's the 2 or 3 weeks
After.
after the hurricane where we'd stand in line for ice, Thank God we had a gas grill, so we were able to grill some things and do that. But the students were great. The students came over. We had a couple trees down. They took the trees out. I love students. Students were fun. They were great. And so then I get this call, and Rob Height, Dr. Height, he just said, "Hey, Ken, we're interested in starting sports medicine." And he knew what I had done when I was with the Department of Orthopedics. And he said, "Yeah." So I went up for an interview. And so then I returned back to Cincinnati, and that's where I started working with a lot of the doctors and things like that,
Wow.
with orthopedics. And we organized probably one of the largest providing athletic trainers to Cincinnati high schools at those days at no charge, and we put trainers out there, or I should say, athletic trainers channel.
Yeah,
And
I'm gonna get
yeah,
calls.
I'm going to get called on that, but athletic trainers out at the high schools. So we started to do that, and then unfortunately, there was some legislation where the doctors thought they were going to have to sell their physical therapy practice. So our doctors sold us to a hospital. Now, I'm, I just, I'm sorry, I can't run that corporate world. I can't
Yeah.
do the corporate life. So here we go again. I knew the head athletic trainer at Miami University, and our doctors were looking to provide coverage for Miami. So Miami was making a change. I got a call from the head athletic trainer at Miami, and he said, "Hey, we're looking to make a change. Can you set us up with a dinner?" So me and a couple of the Wellington doctors had dinner with the head athletic trainer, and they got the contract with Miami. So I looked at my one doctor because I was running all the PT, and I'll never forget this. I'll say, "Rob, do I need to open up a physical therapy center here in Oxford?" And he said, "No, we're not going to put PT up here." Took me 3 seconds to say, "Well, what if I open something up and I'll work at night and I'll work on the weekends?" And he said, "No problem." He said, "You can do that." So I went to one of the hires that I made at the Wellington Clinic, my good friend Pete Zoe. I said, "Hey, Pete, I have an opportunity here. Would you like to open up a private practice in Oxford? You can work a couple nights. I can work a couple nights in the weekends, and let's just see what happens." He said, "I'd love to." So we opened up this Oxford Physical Therapy Center, and now you know the rest of the story.
Wow, that's amazing. And one of the other things I'm really struck by just listening is that we talk a lot to students who feel like I'm going to make a choice, and that choice means I'll never do this again, right? And so my path is like I go this way, and everything's closed off. And just what really strikes me, Ken, is that there were times that you said, "I choose to do everything,
Mhm.
at the moment." And it seems like it was more about knowing the things that you definitely knew you didn't want,
Mm.
right? Like, you didn't wanna do or a place you didn't wanna work. How'd you know those kinda things? Like, how'd you know, like, "This is not a situation I wanna be in," or, "I'm not doing this?"
That a lot of that is personal, and a lot of it is the people that they brought in.
Okay.
And I think I'm a pretty good reader of people, and I just didn't get good vibes, and I didn't like what I was hearing.
Yeah.
And you just kind of you got to make a decision. And I feel very very fortunate that pretty much all my decisions have been right on. I don't regret. I mean, I love the NFL. I loved it on Sunday at 1 o'clock, but during the week, it's a business.
Yeah.
And the one thing that back then is, you know, I'm rehabbing you, John, for your ACL, but I'm rehabbing you because we're going to cut you. So I got to get you better, and then you're going to perform, and then you're cut.
Wow.
And there was a real, one of the kickers invited me out to dinner one night, and then on a Monday night and on a Friday, I found out we were gonna cut him on Tuesday. So I have dinner with this guy Monday night, and he's getting cut on Tuesday, and I'm going, "Whoa," but it was just, and I know athletic training has come a long way, but I felt back then we were kinda, and heck, I can say it, when you get older, you can say whatever and who cares,
There you go.
but I felt like we were kinda second class citizens as an athletic trainer with teams then,
Yeah.
and weren't looked upon very highly, and, I'm sure that's changed a lot now, and I believe it has, but that was one thing that, "Hey, been there, done that, it's time to move on, I wanna try this, I wanna try that." But I guess I've always been independent, and I've wanted to do my own thing.
Yeah.
Uh I've had bosses before, and the best boss for me or best supervisor for me is leave me alone and I'll do it, and you'll see what I do. And they like what they see.
Right.
That's how I work best. And I think I got in a couple things where they were going to try to pigeonhole me a little bit and what I need to do and what I can't do. And I didn't like that. So I don't know. Maybe I was a rebel. Maybe I was a radical. I don't know what you call me, but everything turned out. And there's been some good decisions and some great things. So I'm very, very blessed on my career, and I've had a great career and is winding down now. And I can't look back and say, I wish I would have done this. I've seen a lot of things. I met the greatest people in the world with athletes and coaches. They're the greatest people in the world. I love our coaches here. I love our athletes here. That's why I come up for games and everything. I just love it. And they're great people. They're great to be around.
Yeah. And you get that connection, being an athletic trainer, you build those
Mhm.
relationships and you get to meet
Yeah.
you're in a unique spot
Yeah.
between the players and the
Yeah.
coaches.
It's interesting. I was over at football here earlier today, and James teaches in the physical therapy, and he also does the rehab for the athletes. That's the job I wanted. Now, that would have been interesting. That job didn't exist when I was here, but the ideal job was at that time, I would work at the health center in the morning,
Yeah.
and then in the afternoon, I'd work with the athletes. That was my ideal job. That's what I wanted, but it didn't exist, and we couldn't create it. But now I look at James where he's doing the teaching part, plus he's doing that, and I've told him, I said, "James, back then, that's you got what I wanted, but it wasn't here, so I
Yeah.
moved on, but I kinda envious of him when I see that because to me, that's the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
and in college athletics, I just I know we're struggling with NIL and portals and all that, but I love college athletics. I'm not a I the professional sports, I don't know. They're okay.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the business side of
Yeah.
it and
Yeah,
that was the money
do I
side.
watch them? I probably won't watch the NFL until the weather turns bad. There's too many things to do on the weekends than sit and watch an NFL game, and I'd rather be up here on a Saturday watching a college football game. It's just where it is, so
Yeah,
that's how I'm wired. That's just me.
yeah, it's a very different
Yeah.
experience. Yeah, I appreciate that side about James Odenthal. I mean, he's great as a PT faculty member. There's that intersection though too with his job of a local health system, and we talked about that prior to rolling here, and the idea about being a little more independent versus
Yeah.
connected into a bigger network. I wonder if you just talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel that, when we started, when I led a lot of the Oxford or a lot of the prior physical therapy, and then we started with Oxford, I didn't jump into it right away. I was still heavily involved in working with Wellington at that time. We were hospital owned. So I know my partner and I, we both couldn't jump. So he jumped
Okay.
and, um, when we opened the 3rd center, then that's when I kinda knew I was gonna jump.
Yeah.
But it's what I like about it is, nothing against the corporate world or academia, but if you wanna do something, you just do it, and you can do it tomorrow. You don't have to run it up the flag for 8 weeks and run it back down, and I think that's one thing that we do with our PTs, "Hey, tell us what you want, tell us what you're interested in, and if you wanna work with swimmers, we can make that happen. We can make this happen. Just let us know." There's a lot of connections, a lot of networking, we can do things, and then, Pete and I would, sit around and, we'd talk about, well, let's try this or let's try that. Um, I remember talking to Hugh Sherman, and of course, Hugh was very successful here with the business college.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, Hugh, I said, we opened up a business and I had no idea what I was doing. And we had to write a business plan and I had no idea what I was doing, but something worked. I mean, we're 33, 34 years old now. So apparently something worked. and, and it was a lot. I mean, did we make some big mistakes? Yeah, we did. And we know we did that. And then you just got to correct the ship and go from there and do that. But I don't know. It's just that freedom. It's that independence. I mean, I like to get a group of people. You're the managers of clinics, and what do you think about this? Or how can we do this? Or how can we do that? And hey, you might want to do this. Hey, let's get it done. It's done. We're going to
Yeah.
do it. I don't have to run it by anybody. It's just done. We just decide it and we do it. And it might not be a good idea, and I'll explain. Like you might come to me and say, well, let's spend money and let's advertise at high school football fields. Nope, been there, done that. It's not worth it. It's people are not going to see our name on a high school scoreboard and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to go to them for therapy." Of course, our biggest thing, our biggest challenge with physical therapy is is letting people know that they can choose physical therapy where they want to go. We have direct access. So I've got to teach you people that just because your doctor said go to the physical therapy that I own, no, you can say, no, I want to go to Oxford Physical Therapy because I know they're going to be much better and they're going to get me better and they're going to touch me. They're going to put hands on me and they're going to spend time with me. But that's our big thing. So after you leave as a patient, hey, John, hopefully you enjoyed your experience with Oxford Physical Therapy. Remember, next time you don't have to see a doctor. So if you sprain your ankle, come in and we'll get you better and we'll get you healed and we can run it through your insurance instead of going to the doctor
Right.
and they own MRI, they own X-ray, they'll get their office visit, they own their DME, they own their surgical center, and they own their PT. They're got 6 streams of income, and when you go in for a sprained ankle, you're gonna get 4 or 5 streams of income billed, so you're gonna have this crazy, outrageous bill. You come to us, you're gonna get physical therapy, and we're gonna get you better.
Yeah.
That's my mission now, and that's hard for us to educate the public that you can do that. You don't need to see a doctor first, and you're gonna save a lot of money.
Yeah. It's definitely something I talk with my uh, physio colleagues in Europe about, where they have a pretty different model.
Well, we're getting, PT, we're getting close, and, we're getting close. I mean, there are about I don't know if it's 8 or 9 states that they can order MRIs now,
Wow.
and, I mean, that would be huge if we could order our MRI and then I would go to a non-hospital MRI because if you go to a hospital, it's $2,500. If I go somewhere else, I can get you an MRI for 4 or $500. So that's what's crazy, and what my big pet peeve is these big healthcare entities making all this money, and you can go to PT at a hospital, at a corporate owned, you can go to a private practice, and we can all do the same thing, but they're gonna pay higher. They actually can pay more money, and you get a better reimbursement if you're in a hospital or you're corporate owned or something like that, and to us, that's you wanna get me going, you got me going. That gets me going right there, and that education
Yeah.
piece and how that needs to change, because if I was an insurance company, I'd make people go to a private practice PT because 'cause they're gonna save so much money.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I get on my soapbox
No,
once in a
it's
while.
good.
I
It
get
really,
fired.
but
I
it strikes me, Ken, that, the way you ended up in your practice is pretty consistent with how you ran your whole career,
yeah,
right? There,
yeah,
there are things that you like. There are things you don't want to be doing. You don't want to be put necessarily in a certain box, and you need to be in an environment where you can make those kind of
yeah.
decisions yourself. Yeah,
I guess I'm independent. I don't know. Is that what that's called?
sounds like it.
I'm like getting I'm better in my older age, though. I'm not as radical.
One of the other, so the independence definitely important, getting that. Um, One of the other things we talk about though with students here, so as one of the 10 largest public health focused colleges in the country, we got a lot of students in a lot of different healthcare fields. And developing your own professional identity, extremely important. But you still got to work with other healthcare professionals. And so even somebody very independent like yourself, you still got to collaborate with other people on a healthcare team. I wonder if you could talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you've got we just become very, very good friends. A lot of the time, it's not the physician that orders physical therapy; it's the nurse practitioner,
Okay.
or it can be someone else. So or we get to know some of the home health PTs because some patients will get home health for 2 weeks, and then the doctor just says go to PT. Well, where do I go? I don't know. Look it up in the phone. Well, you don't look in the phone book anymore, but Google it type of thing. So yeah, we have good relationships with with healthcare managers, with certain managers of certain type of patients. When we go in and see doctors, we talk more to who does the referring. A lot of times, that's the nurse practitioner. You're seeing a lot of athletic trainers now becoming MAs.
Yeah.
And, I love when I know the MA is an athletic trainer, and that's great. That's a great lead in. "Hey, this is what we can do. You send your patients." I understand business, and I understand you wanna send all your people to your physical therapy because it's a business. I get it. But, hey, let just try us out. Send us a few patients. Just send us a few, and
Yeah.
that's great. If I get a little here, little here, little here, little here, that's all I need. I don't need everybody. So that's kinda how we approach it. And, yeah, you've just gotta have a really good, respect for the other disciplines, if you will.
Yeah.
That's mainly who we work with, from that, we don't do occupational therapy,
Okay.
so we most of the hand surgeons will have their own hand PT people, certified, PT people, but I can tell you we just finished up with 2 of your students. We had 2 PT students, and we can mention their names, Maddie and Katie. They did great job, and we love OU physical therapy students, and send in as many as you want, and we'll train them, we'll educate them, and so that's great. So
Yeah.
we love their orthopedic knowledge, we love their orthopedic background, and if we have a chance to hire an OU PT grad, I would definitely do that. So
Well, obviously, I love hearing that, and I think you know the preparation that they get here, and then you get to see it
right.
on the other end when you're working with them. So I'm thrilled about that. I'll come back to students for a moment and your soapbox for just a minute, because you talked about the role of educating other people on this. How do you talk to students about their role as advocates for their profession?
Um, what makes it a little difficult in our area is a lot of them take a hospital position,
Okay.
or they take a corporate owned position, or they take a physician owned position. So now they don't really have to network that way because they're just sending them patients. That's where we're a little different. And when we hire someone, they have to be a self starter. They have to be able to market, and they've got to know how to play the game a little bit, and whether that is saying the right things when the patient's discharged, like we talked about,
Mhm.
or, "Hey, John, I've seen, you've, seen a lot of patients from Dr. Jim here, and do you know him? Do you have his cell number?
Mhm.
Do you know his MA? Do you know his PA? Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And then that leads us into a special marketing area.
Right.
Or no, I don't. I said, well, why don't we try to set up a meeting just to meet him so we can put a name with a face, and we can just run by and I'll pick you up and we'll go meet him and things like that. So I think at our level, a little more of that has to happen than I mean, yes, in a perfect world, if you're with a hospital, corporate or physician owned's a little different because you know all the doctors and you know everybody there. But from a hospital, if you got certain doctors that you're referring to, I mean, I guess I'm a little more outgoing. I would wanna meet my referring doctors, and I might have an issue like, what if John's ACL isn't behaving like I want, or I pick on something? What is the best way to communicate with you about that? Who do I communicate with? I don't wanna just send you a letter, "I think your patient's got a torn ACL and you missed it." That's going to go real far. But
End of that network.
end of that network. But yeah, I want to be able to reach out and be able to talk to them, and especially if there's a certain kind of patient I want, and if I'm in a hospital or if I'm in a corporate owned, and I love treating sports injuries, then I want to really network with those doctors and their MAs and PAs because I want them to send me more of those kind of patients because that's what I want to see.
Wow.
So
I mean, Ken, that's so helpful. We talk a lot about soft skills or things that are hard to identify, but you really operationalize that pretty well of, here's the way that kind of context works and here's how you could talk to somebody.
well, it is, and unfortunately, the younger generation, and they probably heard it a million times, they don't communicate anymore. They communicate on their phone, and they don't know how to interview. They don't know how to carry on a conversation. They don't know this. They don't know that. Um, but they don't know how to write a thank you letter, which is incredible to do.
So do you talk about that with the students who come, if they're placed there? So Maddie, did you mention that to her? Or?
I did. I do talk to them, and I actually got a very nice thank you letter from
How about
her,
that?
handwritten, and it was classy. And I get for this athletic training scholarship, I do get handwritten notes from those. Unfortunately, I don't meet them a lot because they're when I'm here and they're here and whatever. But I mean, it's just little things like that that they haven't been brought up with and they don't know. And a handwritten thank you note. Can you read cursive? Type thing. Because I can't print, so this is what you're gonna get.
It,
But yeah, they and you. But there's a lot of them that get it and understand it,
yeah.
and we're looking at people that have been in school 5, 6, 7 years, and they're more professional. And you can just see that's a little bit better than maybe just hiring a BS in this area or something like that.
Right.
So, I mean,
Right.
but yeah, you try to, you try to do it.
And I think the value of those things are still there. I was on a student panel and we were talking about how students in college now like to communicate with their parents. And I thought, I'm sure it's going to be like text message, send me a photo or something like that. Every single one of them, 5 students on the panel, they all said, "I like getting letters from my
Oh,
parents."
wow.
And they liked the experience of getting something in the mail because that was sort of unique, right? But being at college and getting that. I was blown away by that because I was really
Nice.
surprised, and I think we can use that as a foundation for
Yeah.
conversations like, "Hey, you really like getting these, so do
You
other
know,
people."
you kind of touched my heart with that because you brought back a memory. I love back in the days when you had to read newspapers, you know how that was.
Yeah.
I love the Monday sports page from Cincinnati,
Okay.
because it just told me everything. And you're gonna break me up here, but
Uh-uh.
mom used to send that to me
Huh.
every Monday with a handwritten letter, and that was huge.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that can be a way, when we're talking to students of this generation that we can connect,
yeah.
because sometimes it does feel like, man, there is a huge divide here. Like the way I think about things is different, and then I get these reminders, and I love
Mm.
hearing about those. Um, but then you still gotta say, "Okay, you're gonna need to carve out the time to write that." And then it's kinda like what you did before, kind of, "Hey, here's how you systematically, can approach it. I have a stack of cards, and I just always have those and, write them out."
Yeah, yeah,
But sometimes I'll be reminded. I'll reach out to a department chair and say, "Oh, this guy did something great." And they'll say, "Why don't you tell him that?"
yeah. Every 6 months, I'll write a hand to our top referrals, "Thank you so much for your
Yep.
referrals, we appreciate it." Whatever, whatever,
Yeah.
and I'll just drop that off and give them to them. But,
Yeah.
I think the one thing a lot of students, though, they do call their parents quite regularly.
Yeah.
So they do call them, which I found that interesting. They just didn't text them,
That's
but they
right.
actually, "Oh, yeah, I call my mom, every day." I mean, I've heard that, or
Yeah.
I've called, once a week we talk or a couple times a week or whatever.
Yeah.
And grandmas seem to be real important.
That's
A lot of
true.
them talk to grandmas, which
Yeah.
I found was interesting. I said, "I love my grandma." I said, "Oh my gosh, you're you're really hitting home now when you start thinking back then with your grandma, and you start thinking of those stories and how grandma
Absolutely.
came when I graduated from OU, and she was so proud, and
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And I think these are, yeah, how we get the personal connections and that even outside your family, you can connect with
Mhm.
people. I was writing about this last weekend because we had a Bounty on the Bricks event, and, the professional relationships I form with people, they go beyond a 9 to 5. I
They
mean,
do,
they're really meaningful.
and the networking is just so, so great.
Yeah.
Some kids just can't quite communicate or they can't talk.
Yeah. But, I mean, you've met some incredible people over your career, Ken, trying to do you keep in touch with a lot of people?
No, I try to, you do, and I was at the Reds game last night with a good friend of mine, and he wanted to hear a little bit more, your most exciting team, this and that, and
Yeah.
I just said I said the athletes were just, crazy, and, a good friend of mine, he played safety for the Detroit Lions, Dick Duran, and then he played for the Bengals, and then he coached in the NFL. I just found out he passed away a few months ago,
Mm.
and, Dick was a great guy, and, I tended to keep in touch with those guys earlier, and then you just unfortunately, you lose track,
Yeah.
and, uh, and then you start thinking, "Boy, I'd like to have talked to him," but, of course, in those days, it wasn't as easy because it was pretty much a landline,
Yeah.
and then when they moved or now it'd be so easy, um, but, I did, I've reached out to, "Hey, let's meet in Athens and let" some of the old roommates and stuff, and let's do something like that, but I wish I did more of that, a lot of my mentors, unfortunately, are no longer here.
Yeah.
And I had a high school football coach in Cincinnati that his name was Jerry Darty, and he just really, really got in my head. And he said, unfortunately, he passed at age 32 of cancer. But he said, now, when you go to OU, he said, you're going to want to quit. You're going to want to do this. You're going to want to do that. He said, don't quit. Don't you quit. He said, don't you be a typical high school student that we have here. Don't do that. Don't quit. And I just, we would talk a lot, and he was a big influence on my life, and just a great guy, a great football coach, and uh, so
Wow.
I was actually covering a high school, and there was this kid, and his last name was Darty, the same as coach. And I looked at this kid, I said, "You gotta be kidding me." And long story short, it was Rick Darty, and he was Jerry's son. So I knew little Rick Darty when he was 2 years old walking on our football field at Reading. And I found his son, and it was neat because he asked me a lot of questions about his dad because he never knew his dad. And I just told him a lot of great things, and he was so happy when we got done talking that I just edified his dad so much, and his dad meant so much to me, and I said, I really, really miss him, and, so that was,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, Ken, you hit on one last, I think important function of this podcast, which is we don't want to lose these stories, and you've got so many of them. You talk about your mentors, but you're a mentor to a lot of people now too, and just being able to save some of that and now make it available to other people, I think is really important. It's important to the history of this place too, that we don't lose those stories. So I just really appreciate the time today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, I really, really appreciate it. Like I said, I love OU, and, we can finish by OU, oh yeah.